My name is Kotrina Kajokaite. I am a postdoctoral researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Evolution and Anthropology. And I would like to start my talk by celebrating some of the oldest females who lived at the Lomas Barbudal Biological Reserve. They lived to be 28, 26, and 34 years old. And in a long-lived species like capuchin monkeys, lifespan is a component of lifetime reproductive success. So a key question is then, do those who are more social also are those who live longer? The association between sociality and survival has been demonstrated in many mammal species like dolphins, baboons, blue monkeys, hyrax, humans, other primates, but New World primates are not represented in this list. So today I want to show you a study that where we attempt to answer this question. Does the sociality of an adult female capuchin monkey predict her survival? A little bit about white-faced capuchin monkeys. These monkeys live in groups. They're New World primates. Females usually stay in the natal groups and reproduce there, while males disperse, sometimes multiple times in their life. These monkeys can live up to 55 years in captivity in the wild. The oldest one we've seen at Lomas lived about 38 years old. And females reach sexual maturity around age of 6, and males seem to be able to reproduce around that age, but really they don't grow to the full body size until they're about 10. And this species is characterized by long alpha male tenures and high reproductive skew, which means the majority of the males never sire any offspring. So the data I'm going to be showing you today was collected between 2002 and 2019. It comes from 11 social groups that have about 7. The smallest group is about 7 individuals, and the largest groups are around 26. So back to our research question. All these studies that look for association between sociality and survival have really a variety of ways how they measure individual sociality. And broadly, this could be summarized on how much emphasis is put on interaction rates or on the number of partners that individuals have. Sometimes emphasis is put on strong bonds, strong partnerships, sometimes on the weak ones. But really, even if we're testing for association, there is an assumption that social interactions, there's a direct pathway from social interactions to the survival. And the choice of the measurement really should depend on how we think that path, what kind of pathways could there be. So broadly, there could be, these pathways could be several types. So it could be that social interactions directly translate into survival-related benefits. For example, if individual receives a lot of tolerance while foraging, they will have a better access to resources and survive better. These social interactions might also be associated with spatial centrality. So individuals, for example, who groom a lot will be more central in their social group and will avoid predators better than those who are more peripheral and survive better. And finally, individuals might actually be exchanging one type of social interaction and receive other type of interaction that leads to better survival. So females might be providing grooming and in return might get coalition support, which might improve their rank, which is associated with greater survival, or might result in less wounding because they have a lot of coalition partners, which also leads to better survival. So which social interactions should we choose for capuchin monkeys? Robert Hind argued that in order to study social relationships, to quantify them, we should look at affiliative, cooperative, and tolerant types of interactions. So for capuchin monkeys, we chose grooming as an affiliative type of interaction. We chose support and coalition aggression as cooperative type of interaction. These monkeys engage in fights, which turn into coalitions very often. And finally, we chose foraging in close proximity of others as sort of a measure of a tolerance, how tolerated individuals are by their group members. For grooming and coalitionary support, we had information who is the provider of the interaction and who is the recipient. And we wanted to separate this because being a provider or recipient really can put you on a different sort of pathway that leads to survival. But for foraging, we did not have this information. We just had information who was observed foraging around others. So we're going to take these interactions and we're going to turn them into, we're going to quantify them and make a sociality measure. In our case, it's 5 measures. So we chose an individual level measure that's best conceptualized as social integration measure, where we put all the emphasis on amount of interactions individuals have rather than how many social partners they have, because we really wanted to summarize overall participation of females in their social life, regardless of how many partners or what type of partners they have. And to get this type of measure, we use social relations model, and I'm going to tell you about this model now. So it was developed by David Kenny and colleagues. And what this model does, you take all exchanges of interactions, for example, grooming, and you between individual I and J, and you partition the variance in the following components. First is population base rate, which tells you on average how likely these monkeys are engaged into grooming in this population. Then there are 2 actual level estimates, which tell you first, individual I, who is providing grooming to J, how likely this individual to provide grooming to anyone in their social group. And the second actual level estimate tells you how likely this individual J is to be a recipient of grooming from anyone in their social group. And finally, the dyadic variation basically tells you if you have there's given the population base rate of this behavior, and given both of these individual propensities to be giver and receiver of these interactions, does this particular dyad engage more in this interaction than what those estimates already account for? So this matters, for example, if a female has a young offspring that she tends to groom a lot and often, this dyadic variation really will absorb most of that relationship, and her actual level giver estimate will not be inflated just because she has one very intense relationship. As I mentioned, these actual level estimates are really estimating how likely one is to give or receive from anyone in their social group. So we took these actual level estimates and they were modeled as random effects. And we took not only a point estimate like a mean, but we also took a standard deviation because we really wanted to account for heterogeneous sampling. So we have 18 years of data, 11 social group, and there's a great variation in how much each individual was observed each year. So by taking standard deviation, those individuals who were observed a lot, their estimates will be very certain. So the mean and standard deviation will, the standard deviation will be small. And the individuals who were observed very little will have a large standard deviation. So we wanted to propagate this uncertainty when we take these actual level estimates from social relation models and then use them as predictors of survival in the survival model. Okay, so we take these actual level estimates. We have 5 of them. We have grooming giving, grooming receiving, support giving, support receiving, and foraging in close proximity. As I mentioned, this one is not a directional because we didn't have that information. So it just summarizes how likely an individual is to be observed foraging close to anyone in their social group. And we had these estimates for 132 adult females, and we observed there were 62 deaths in the data set. We built a Bayesian-Cox proportional hazard model. In fact, we built 5 models for each for separate interaction type. And each of these models had the following covariates: female's age, her dominance rank, group size, mother's presence, so whether the mother was alive that particular year. So these are annual estimates because we wanted to include these sort of other things that vary annually. And so mother's presence and the number of daughters and dominance ranks and group size, they change annually. So now I'm going to show you results, how well each of these sociality measures predict survival. And I want you to pay attention only to the part that I highlighted. So each of these columns represents a different Cox proportional hazard model where where I vary different sociality measure like grooming giving, grooming receiving, and so on. And if you look at these estimates, all of them are positive as predicted. However, only for grooming giving, the highest posterior density interval, which I'm going to be calling HPDI, excludes 0, which means only for grooming giving, the model is fairly certain that the estimate is above 0. For others, even if the estimate are positive in the predicted direction, the HPDI does not include does include 0, which means that the model is not certain that no effect is not possible in this case. So to better understand what these numbers mean, I calculated predictions, annual probabilities of dying at 2 representative ages, 10 and 30. So the line in blue represents females that are 30-year, predictions for a female who's a 30-year-old, and the line in yellow represents a female who is 10 years old. And each of these panels represents different Cox proportional hazard model, but they all show similar patterns. Some of them are more flat than others, but I think, as I said, only for grooming giving, so panel A is the one that the model is the most certain. And here you see on the x-axis, females on the left are the ones who almost never groom others. And then on the right side of the x-axis, it represents females who groom a lot. And on the y-axis, you have probability of dying. And you see the more females provide grooming, the less likely they are to die that year. So to conclude, providing grooming to others is associated with greater survival rates. And there's no strong evidence that receiving grooming, participating more often in coalitionary aggression, or foraging more often in close proximity of others results in higher survivorship. So what does all of that mean? So I think, first of all, our findings are broadly consistent with the findings in other mammals that where there's associated and shown between sociality and survival. Of course, our sociality measures are quite different from others reported in literature because we emphasize interactions with all of the partners rather than focusing on specific interactions. And also we used, instead of point estimate, we used entire distributions of these estimates to predict survival. Also, what can we say? What providing grooming can tell us about the relationship to survival? It's probably unlikely that there's a direct translation of being provider of grooming to greater survival, but these results are consistent with these other pathways where being a provider of grooming makes you central in the group, and therefore you might be more likely to avoid predation. It is also consistent with the idea that females might be exchanging grooming for other benefits like tolerance, which might result to better access to resources, increase in rank, and these impact their survival. And of course, we cannot exclude in the study that there might be something genetically different about these females who groom a lot and also survive better. Yeah. So to finish, I would like to acknowledge my co-authors and funding agencies, and I would like to acknowledge all of the field assistants and field managers who contributed in collecting this data set and made this study possible. Thank you.